Event recording is in progress. Here we go.
Here we go.
And the park board, where we discussed 3 concepts for the Newport Way Maple to Sunset project and the Green Necklace. Based on the conversation in that meeting, we identified the common values, ranked the common values, did some polling, broke out into breakout rooms, and the project team got a lot of really good feedback from the 2 different boards. Based on the feedback that we got from everyone who was in attendance that night, a letter was drafted that will go from the 2 boards, the Park Board and the Transportation Advisory Board, to Mayor Polly advising on the project. For the letter, because for anyone who wasn't there, when the whole group was polled, concept A, which had a concept A had a slight majority of the overall polled. But then when we polled each board separately, because you are 2 separate boards, the Transportation Advisory Board polled to show that they prefer concept A, and the Park Board voted that you guys prefer concept B. And however, I feel like more important than the actual voting of the polling is the values that went into this. And that's what the majority of this letter tries to reflect, is the advice that we got from everyone who was in attendance for the 3 concepts. And our intention is that that letter reflects the advice that we got there and then summarizes the polling. And then at the bottom of the letter is a spot for the different boards to add additional comments that they would like to have listed in the letter that goes to advise Mayor Polly. I recently met with the Transportation Advisory Board, and I'm going to pull up and read to you what they ended up having as their motion that was approved. And that was the Transportation Advisory Board voted to endorse the letter upon having 2 members of the TAB receive comments from the Park Board and add language in the TAB section to add about the bicycles and pedestrian safety when crossing and entering and exit the roundabouts. And so that is what the Transportation Advisory Board had. And so the 2 things that I really am asking from you tonight as the Park Board is, number 1, to, as a group, decide what comments in addition to what's in the letter you would like in the letter to be added to the Park Board section, and 2, to vote to endorse the letter. And with that, I will turn it back to you, Chair, to facilitate the conversation.
Thank you for that, John. So we have some time. I think this is a good opportunity for board members to make some comments. We actually had 8 people at the joint meeting. Only 2 were missing, Chris and Jeremy. We do have Chris here this evening, so this may be an opportunity for you to make any comments that you would like, Chris, and really for any board members to make comments. I have a few additional comments so that we can have a little bit of discussion. To some extent, I think to help support why the Park Board overall selected option B as the preferred option from the Park Board. What went into thoughts about that versus what TAB was supporting with option A. So with that, I'll open this up to discussion from the board members. I'll speak last because maybe you'll say something that I don't need to repeat. So let's go around And actually, I'd kind of like to, we have time, I'd kind of like to hear from everybody on the board as to which option that you selected and maybe your thoughts in terms of why that was the case.
Could you, can somebody share their screen and show those again so that we can get our memory refreshed?
That would be John, maybe that could do that. I mean, essentially, yeah, okay,
I can, I just need to be made a presenter and I would be glad to do that.
okay.
Thanks.
And while we're waiting for that, John, is essentially is option 3 off the table, or is that something that still can be discussed?
I would say it still could be discussed. It was pulling so far behind that I felt like it was skewing the data to have two alternatives that had a shared use path, and that I felt like it would not reflect the support for concept B if we still had concept C in there.
Okay. Yeah, I need to get with the program here. It's concept A, concept B, and concept C. You know, the only, yeah, can see that well. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I'll do a quick just description of the different concepts and then hand it back to the discussion. This is concept A, which concept A has separated facilities for bicyclists and pedestrians and it's symmetrical on both sides. 6 feet of space is dedicated to bicycles and would be a different surface material than the sidewalk that would be next to it, which is also 6 feet wide. And so this concept achieves the goal of having a 12-foot trail by doing it on both sides, but then to separating the users between the bicyclist and the pedestrians.
And does this just the bicycle lanes are not one way, is that correct? Or are they, do you remind us how that is on this demonstration? They would be one way?
Yes.
Okay, great.
So my question that follows up to what Danielle just said, John, who actually monitors the one way? My concern with this part of it is that you could end up having bikes going in both directions, which would actually potentially create more of a safety problem because now you only have 6 foot in width for that to occur. I assume there's going to be signage. Is that one thing that would help monitor that?
The signage and pavement markings. It would be no different than what we do for cars, where we'll sign it and put pavement markings down indicating it's one way. But
there is the potential for people, for bikes and other electric type vehicles to go in 2 different directions.
There would be the potential for that.
Okay. I can't see everyone with this up, so if any board members want to have something to comment or say, just go ahead and say your thing without me having to call on you. But before we move on, are there any other comments from the board on concept A? Not hearing any. Let's go to concept B.
Okay. Concept B would identify this is the Squawk Mountain side, and this is the Issaquah Valley Elementary School side. And the Squawk Mountain side would be identified for a shared use path that would be 12 feet wide. This would be used by both bicycles and pedestrians. It would have traffic that would go both ways for the bicycles and the pedestrians. And then this is a 12-foot wide, and we're calling it a sidewalk, but in a lot of ways it is a concrete shared use path. It would be used by both bicycles and by pedestrians, and the bicycles would be able to head both directions. And it's very similar to concept A, but it's different in that the users are not given their own specific space. They're free to either bike or walk on either side of the road in either direction.
Any questions or comments from anybody on the board on concept B? I guess my only comment that I have on this is that my concern anytime you have shared use with bikes and pedestrians. And I know this is something that we've talked about before, but I mean, I just think that that's a concern. And I think that given that we have the space, it would be ideal to separate bikes and pedestrians altogether. I mean, I know that concept A makes an attempt at doing that, but my concern with that is you're going to have overflow because you only have 6-foot width. You're going to potentially have overflow from bikes into the sidewalk portion and people walking into the pathway portion. Ideally, it would certainly be nice to create the pathway as being bikes, electric type vehicles, that type of thing only. You could also have pedestrians on there, but ideally sidewalks may be just best for pedestrians only. I mean, to use a phrase from an old movie, I mean, build it and they will come. And that's exactly what will happen over time is if you have the predominant use of bikes on a paved pathway versus a sidewalk, that would be an awful lot safer. You know, when you look at Rainier Trail, East Lake Sammamish Trail, those type of pathways, those are multi-use. But you don't have the issue with vehicles quite so much as you do in this particular corridor. And so an added additional safety component that I see is people turning off of Newport, passing through the pathway or this sidewalk, and having to then maneuver safety of pedestrians and bicycles. And you don't have a lot of time to maneuver. Safety to me is one of the biggest concerns. It's also the top criteria that everybody agreed upon. And when you, as an example, if you have somebody driving down Newport Way that decides to turn into one of these parking lot areas, there's an awful lot of side streets coming into this roadway, and having to very quickly decide safety of bicycles and electric skateboards and all sorts of things. I mean, I just see that as being a concern. And if you have all of those over on just one side of the road rather than on both sides of the road, you at least limit the hazard and risk of that concern. Also, you've got situations where people could maybe rely upon the one-way aspect of concept A and not necessarily pay so close attention to bikes and electric vehicles on these sidewalks. And like I said, you have a little 5.5-foot buffer, not much time to make a decision when you're pulling off Newport Way and crossing in front of electric type vehicles. It's going to be high. This is the main high use corridor through Issaquah. And so though it doesn't maybe get as much use now, it certainly will get a lot of use in the future. And with so many side streets coming off into there, I guess that would be my biggest concern in terms of safety. So I've said an awful lot more on concept B here, but essentially this is the concept that the park board kind of supported. And I think to some extent, some of those reasons may be what I just mentioned. Any other comments from park board members on concept?
Well, I'll share that I actually, I think my preference between these two is actually concept A. because I feel like it does do a little bit more of that separation. I know there will probably be some, bleeding over from one side to the other, but I did like that there was like a bike path, area. To me, like that worked. But I think it just is, it all depends on, I think they're pretty. I agree that I think everybody's comments are everybody's just looking at safety in a slightly different way, right? And we won't really know, until it happens. How some of this will work out. I personally was really would have really preferred a completely separate bike path, and I know that there's an issue with the buffers. No, there's not enough space to do that, but I would have liked to have seen us deal with that in some kind of creative way. This is a transportation corridor, so like to me, it seems like we know that there are going to be bikes moving, using this road. So I don't remember what concept C was. It was similar to this.
It was. Any other comments from board members about concept B?
Yeah, this is Chris Kovac. So I don't know if you guys can see me or not.
Can.
On concept B, what kind of signage and direction are we being proposed to let users know that the northeast side is pedestrian only and the southeast side is available for bicyclists? I don't want to sound anti-bicycle, but they're going to go wherever they want to go. Too, and give them a place and identify that place that I think they're more likely to observe it, recognize it as their space. But if it's open, just paved, they're gonna go all over the place.
I can answer your question. I'll answer it two ways. The first is that in the city of Issaquah, riding a bicycle on the sidewalk is perfectly legal. And so with concept B, there's nothing to stop someone from riding the bicycle on the 12-foot sidewalk. And now from a wayfinding point of view, in order to accentuate the green necklace components, that there would be wayfinding that would be directing people to the paved side, but there would be nothing that would be preventing a bicyclist from riding on the sidewalk.
Thank you. I think I don't know if my vote counts at this point because I wasn't here at the last meeting, but that said, I think concept A that seems more preferable to me because it will at least identify a lane for cyclists and a lane for pedestrians, and both of them can figure that out as when they're walking or riding, they can find it of where they should and shouldn't be. And I do see that at Alki Beach. Green Lake has it, although I think they might have separated something at Green Lake, but so that's my thoughts on it.
Thanks, Chris. And your vote does matter, especially at this time when we're still trying to determine whether concept A or concept B is something that the park board wants to support. Other comments from the board?
Yeah, I had one. So I liked concept A because there's clearly defined paths for kind of each mode of transportation. But what I worry about is knowing that the school is on the northeast side, then for kids that come out of school, they only kind of forced to go one way until they get to a crosswalk and then cross the street and then head in the other direction.
Are you talking about? Did I understand that right? This is for kids riding their bikes to school?
That's right. So if the school's on the northeast side and kids get out and they want to make a left, but they're only allowed to go right, they would have to go down, cross at a roundabout, and then come back the other way, correct?
Correct.
Yeah, that's part of the point I was mentioning, is that there's, in terms of actual usage and convenience, even though those lanes may be one way, I can easily see people going in two different directions. And then you're limited to 6 foot as a pathway. And that, potentially can create some safety concerns.
I think there's probably some ways to mitigate that though, like as far as like exits from the school. Like currently there's like a sidewalk, or not a sidewalk, but there's a crosswalk right like halfway through that, kind of like in the middle part of their field area. So I think that if you had like a fence, if you didn't have a fence opening and you had, bikes coming out at the roundabouts or at a crosswalk, that would help mitigate. But you're exactly right. Like everybody's going to go the shortest direction that they can. Like nobody likes to go a little bit farther and around, the wrong way to get on the right side of the road. That's an issue.
Other comments from anyone? Nothing, Zach? Ruben, anything?
No, I still prefer concept B only because I think with identifying the sidewalk and identifying the asphalt area, at least mentally, people get a picture of where they should be. So I just thought that'd be safer.
Meaning that if it's a sidewalk, is most people are going to use it as a sidewalk for walking, and the path, most people are going to use it for bikes and electric vehicles. Danielle, do you have something more?
I was curious what Ruben's thought was there. Like, so are the ground surfaces different on those two? Or how would people?
That was my understanding, was that on concept B, on the northeast side was going to be strictly a sidewalk of concrete, and the other side was going to be the asphalt bike trail type appearance.
Okay.
That's correct. Right.
And on the bike path one, I just need to get some clarity. So that one, people could also walk on?
Correct.
Okay, so like if you're a parent and you've got a couple little kids on their bikes, you could be on that, walking with them, and they could be on their bikes.
Correct.
Okay.
Although as I see it, in some respects, people might gravitate to the sidewalk, concrete side as quickly as possible if it's safer to walk and get away from bikes and electric vehicles. Any other?
Yeah, I would say when you have little kids on bikes, I mean, they are a hazard to everyone around them, right? But they're also, when I had kids that age, I did not want them anywhere near like commuter bikes because, they're just going so much faster.
Right.
So I don't know, I guess concept B might be better for that, but.
Right. Because the kids would come out at the northeast side, get on the sidewalk, and they might not have as much encounter with, more bike type commuters, you mean?
Yeah,
Right.
perhaps, I don't know.
And John, we didn't really show concept C.
Oh, well, I stopped the screen share because I think it was kind of blocking the screen. I saw a few other hands that were up, and I wanted to make sure everyone got to talk.
Zach, you had
Zach's
something?
good.
Zach, can't hear you, Zach. You're not on mute. You must have microphone issues, Zach.
Could the phone you're connected to be on mute?
He's on the computer. Might take a look at your system. What microphone you're using, Zach?
Zach, on my end, it shows you're unmuted.
Zach, take a look at your mic. in the drop down of under mute, far right corner of that, it says audio options on that drop down, and you can maybe select your audio option. And just step in when you're able to make comment. While we're waiting for that, John, could you bring up concept C?
Yes, I was just pulling it up right now. And this is concept C, which instead of having a 12-foot shared use path, identified a 14-foot wide shared use path made out of asphalt and had an 8-foot wide sidewalk on the Squawk Mountain side. And one of the concepts behind this one was thinking of extra space with people going to and from the school to give a little bit of extra room there. And then the buffer here was widened a little bit, and the goal was if a car was trying to leave, it could pull up to the path, look both ways, then once it's safe, get up to here to look to go, and it would partially block the path, but it wouldn't fully, and to try and accommodate some of that. And that's where we came up with concept C.
Comments from the board on concept C?
I have a question, maybe for John, and not specific to C, but in what respect does the decision that we make about the corridor here impact farther down the road or other places in the city? Like if we adopt concept A or B here, and then a year from now we look at kind of Newport down to like to the skate park, and then we say there's a different concept there. So just kind of curious about what's decided here and how it impacts other future expansions around.
That's a great question, and that's one that Jennifer Pink and I have talked a lot about. Is we look at Newport from SR 900 west to 54th, there is a concept that has a shared use path on the north side of the road. And then there's the section where Tibbetts Valley Park is and the transit center. And then there's the section, I'll say between 12th and Maple. And so we've got these three different sections, and we need to do planning on how best, depending on whatever concept is chosen here, knowing that a concept's already been chosen for the section west of SR 900. Some work needs to be done to think of how to move I'll just say the green necklace or the non-motorized users through there. And I think probably the next one to really start thinking about is the section between SR 900 and 12, because the work to do the anchor park planning is going to be happening. And I think that's the time to start thinking about what the road of Newport will look like at in that section. And that said, I think regardless of which one we choose, that, and this is just me off the top of my head, the section between SR 900 and 12, it probably makes more sense to have a shared use path, kind of like west of SR 900, but that's just me doing a quick thought on it, but not actually going through a public involvement process.
Well, it does make sense to have consistency through the city, I would think, on all these arterials, or else it gets too confusing for the people that are using the pathways and the sidewalks. So, I mean, actually having some consistency makes a lot of sense. And this is kind of a key area here that we need to get this right so that the other areas, kind of use the same kind of process. I'll just make a comment here. This is actually the concept that I voted for initially. And my reasoning being is if you shrink up the sidewalk to 8 feet, the likelihood of people using that for bikes and other electric type vehicles diminishes because it's not wide enough. And likelihood is people are going to gravitate to the 14-foot path, and that's really where you're going to see most of bikes and electric type vehicles. I got to tell you, I was on Rainier the other day, the Rainier path, and I got passed by an electric skateboard that could have killed me. It was going so fast. And I think we have to really consider, these newer electric type vehicles that are going to use these pathways as a big safety issue. And there isn't going to be anybody that's going to be monitoring this other than the people that are using these paths to some extent. And so the safer that you create a pathway for those type of vehicles, the better off we'll be. And, again, that's why I chose concept C, is because I think people are going to walk on the 8-foot path and the bikes are going to probably stay off of it. And the 14-foot pathway is where most bikes and electric type vehicles are going to use. And I realize I'm outvoted, and so I guess I should quit talking, but at least that's my sense of it. Any other people want to add something on concept C before we move on?
I would say I don't think that you're outvoted on that. I don't recall actually. I don't think we really voted on concept C. But I think that there's not a really strong consensus among everybody because there isn't a really separate area for bikers, and this is a transportation corridor. So I think, like, to me, it just seems very kind of like we're not. It just isn't really doing what we really would like it to do. And I know there are reasons for that. The tree buffer kind of areas are big, but I just wish there was a way to maybe eliminate one of those and use something that's narrower as a buffer, and then have an actual bike lane in an area that's clearly for bikers. That would be separate than something for pedestrians and little kids that are biking, But I think that's why we're not seeing a super strong consensus.
Zach, it sounds like you've rejoined on a different machine, or do you have the ability to test your microphone and make comment?
Yes, can everyone hear me?
Yep, we can. Go ahead.
Okay, apologies about before.
No problem.
I definitely think some good points up for B this evening that definitely made me rethink my initial vote for A. My initial vote for A was mainly due to the fact that it was open to users on either side. So my thought was that at least having some sort of delineation between pedestrians and cyclists on both sides would be at least have some way to sort of corral each the cyclists and the pedestrians into certain sections. Just thinking about it from my perspective, if I'm commuting on that stretch of road that's only about 7/10 of a mile, not necessarily going to like going across traffic to get over to the other side if I'm headed, to go against traffic if I'm already on the one side. So I would tend to probably just remain on the road if there's not an option for both sides. So that was my thought for safety issues with concept B. But certainly with the points about the school and children kind of commuting on their bicycles kind of made me rethink that a little. But that was my thought for concept A, was just being able to have a defined delineation between the two, where if somebody's coming out of their house, they're able to walk on one side and they have a designated area, similar to there's a designated area to go with the flow of traffic if you're coming in from a different street. So that was my thought process during the vote last week.
Thanks, Zach. John, can you take this off screen so I can see everybody? Everybody's seen the concepts now. And I saw that Jeff had a question and comment. So go ahead, Jeff.
Yeah, thanks, Brad. Thanks, everybody. Really, really good discussion. Kind of a question and a comment for John. So, and based on what I'm hearing discussion-wise, it appears the concept A and B have a pretty similar prism, a right-of-way prism. So as that design is happening, as you're building that infrastructure, and knowing, again, I think we'd all love to look in the crystal ball and get this exactly right. But let's just say we live with whatever concept, and it's not functioning to the degree we want. How interchangeable is it? Are there ways that it can be designed and built so that there's some degree of switching out between, since the program of those two prisms is so similar?
Great question, Jeff. And that's actually something that I thought of, and especially when we had the joint meeting, and it wasn't like everyone just came together saying, we really want this one concept, that it is interchangeable because they are identical. And so from a construction point of view, and let me go ahead and share my screen again. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to share concept B, but the same thing would be true for A. What you would do, let's see here, share, is when you build this 12-foot wide sidewalk, as we would have the jointing pattern, I would think just to put a joint at the 6 feet right down the middle. And then if we go with concept B for hypothetical situation, and 5 years into it, we have the system called See-Click Fix, where residents will submit their concerns to the city, and we get a lot of neighborhood traffic concerns. And if this is our top See-Click Fix thing, and we can see it's just not working out, all we'd have to do is to go through and remove this 6 feet of concrete and pour back 6 feet of asphalt, and then over here just line up right down the middle, and then have an asphalt saw cutter go cut it out, remove it, and then put in the concrete. It wouldn't be too hard. And then likewise, if we went with concept A, and same kind of thing, where we could just remove the asphalt path and put in concrete right next to the concrete, and we could remove the concrete sidewalk and just basically just like you would widening the asphalt, and just widen it. So it's not too hard to switch it if we go with concept A or concept B and we find it's not working and need to make a change.
Did that answer your question, Jeff? Limited time here, so I kind of want to go around the horn here and just get a little poll here from everyone. What concept currently you would vote for? Zach?
I think I would still go with A.
Ruben?
Well, I would go for B, but I can live with A, but I'd still go with B.
Danielle?
I still would vote for A, but yeah, I'm not. I'm the same way. I could be comfortable with B.
Jonathan?
Concept B.
Chris?
Concept A, but I could go either way.
And I would actually go with concept B, but actually somewhat could go either way, but B. 1, 2, 3. So we're basically split right down the middle. So, and that's fairly close to where we were when we met with Tab. I think we were at 57% concept B. And so we're kind of split. So anyway, I think everybody's kind of shared their vision here. And, you know, my 2 cents is, you know, really for the other aspects of this in terms of fulfilling connections for Green Necklace and all of that, I don't think it matters which concept it is. I think it really fulfills that purpose to provide connections. Jennifer or Jeff can correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm not actually seeing any future park development along that particular corridor. I think what's already there is kind of there. And so for the most part, it's really going to just be about connections, and I think it fulfills that. And so it's really a matter of which one of these is going to be the safest, I think. And we've all commented enough, probably more than enough than you'd want to hear, John, about that. But for the most part, I think you know where most of us stand. Danielle, you had something?
Yeah, I just, one more thing to add is that it would make a big difference to me if an adjoining part of this section, if we were going a different way with it. So if it made so that the transition from one section to another section of Newport was more seamless and less confusing for people. So, I don't know how helpful that is, but whatever that next transition is, that if there was a reason why we had to go with one of these or the other, and that made more sense, then that would sway me one way or the other.
Okay. John, I'm a little mixed here in terms of how to reach some sort of vote here. I mean, I think your letter is fine leading up to the additional part. At least that's what I would say anyway. And I don't know if anybody has any objections to supporting the letter as it stands. In terms of what the park board would want to add additionally, I don't know that we can come up with consensus with a one-liner like Tab did with all of the comments that we just made tonight.
Well, I would say you're not limited to one line. They just only had one line.
Right.
But there was lots of great information that and perspective that you guys provided here tonight, and trying to think of how best to add that to the letter.
Might be drafting something. I don't know what your time frame is, but I could draft something, I guess, kind of consolidating what we talked about tonight, and
I've got one idea.
Uh-huh.
What if the motion that the park board would have would be to appoint one or two people to then meet with, or to take the comments from tonight and add it to the letter, and that way, and then that person or people could meet with one or two people from the tab, just making sure that, assuming that we don't change any of the intent of the comments, that is just capturing it. That way we can move it forward, but not slow the board down with the board's work plan.
Okay. I like that. So similar to what Tab put in their comments. Okay.
Correct.
Before we do that, Ryan, do you have anything that you want to add from the youth's perspective?
Nothing necessarily specific to youth, I would say. For me, when I was at the joint meeting, I was definitely more leaning towards concept A, but I will say that the comments tonight have made me a lot more comfortable with B. So I think either way, it's going to be beneficial. Whichever one we go with, it's going to be an improvement from what it is now.
Okay. So let's have a motion to approve the letter and to add a comment that there will be, what, 2 people to meet with Tab to reach any kind of consensus? Is that what you said, John?
But not consensus, just to capture the comments that were discussed tonight at the meeting that weren't captured in the letter. So if there's a perspective that someone brought up at the meeting tonight that was not captured in the letter, that we can make sure it's added under the park section. That's what I had in mind.
Okay. And for that to be documented into the letter at some point after the meeting with Tab?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. So can I have a motion to approve?
Are you looking for a motion to approve the letter in concept and to appoint like Brad and Zach, or
Yes,
to meet and ensure that the comments from tonight are captured in the letter under the park board
correct. Yes,
heading.
yes. Is that a motion?
That's a motion.
Anyone like to second that? Well, I need to ask Zach. I'm fine with having another meeting with Tab. Zach, are you all right with that? Zach, I see a thumb. Okay. We
I'll
need a
second as
on
well.
that motion.
I'll second as well.
Okay.
Second the motion.
Okay, we have now everybody say aye if you agree with the motion. Aye.
Aye.
Any objections? If there are, raise your hand. Seeing none, the motion is approved.
Well, thank you very much. Everyone, I really appreciate the thought and the insight that you guys provided. It's very helpful.
Thank you, John, for all your help with this. It's going to be a great corridor when we get it on. It's going to be really good. So I appreciate your help tonight. And I guess Zach and I will hear further in terms of an additional meeting once Tab knows about that.
Okay.
Thank you, John.
Thanks, John.
See ya. Okay. We did all that with only 4 minutes over. We're not too bad here. So I guess we are now going to have a presentation from Gary Shimmick about the stormwater master plan that's being reviewed and undertaken. So Gary, thank you. Please introduce yourself. You are the manager of engineering of public works. I may not have that accurate, but you could maybe clarify.
Yes, thank you, Brad. Could I be made a presenter so I could share my screen?
I did make you a presenter.
Okay. My
Isn't that showing?
my share button is not highlighted.
Don't see it yet.
There we go.
Okay.
Okay. And
There we go.
okay. All right, so thank you again, Brad. Good evening, Parks Board. As Brad alluded to, I am your Utilities Engineering Division Manager and here to present a status report on our storm and surface water master plan and our wastewater master plan. Before we get into it, I'd like to introduce, just call it our core team members at this time that have joined us today. So Alan Quinn, Senior Stormwater Engineer. Matt Alice will be going over a fairly detailed but very cool slide toward the end. He's our Senior Utility Engineer. And then Dave Jacobs and Francesca White from Osborne Consulting, which have been providing incredible support for us for the past few months. So this is a combined update for the two planning processes because the strategic framework, which we're going to focus on tonight, is common to both efforts, as well as an overarching goal to protect our valuable water resources from the potential impacts of sewer overflows, septic system infiltration, and of course, stormwater runoff. In addition to the status report, we'll be seeking your feedback along the way on the first three elements of the strategic plan, those being focus areas, purpose statements, and objectives. Now, of course, your general feedback is always welcome. But we do have some specific questions that I just want to run over now, and then we'll go over when we get into about halfway. So 4 questions that will be looming during the presentation are, do the focus areas cover the most important categories of our municipal stormwater, surface water, and wastewater work? Do the purpose statements make each focus area come alive in a way that is intelligible for technical and non-technical customers? Third is, do the objectives address the most significant issues associated with each focus area and purpose? And finally, a pretty wide open question, do you have any specific strategies or actions that you want to make sure we can consider as we move towards the next phase of our project? To the next slide here. So we have 7 sections to cover today. So planning hierarchy, master plan contents, our strategic framework, the 6 preliminary focus areas. Then the focus area purpose and objectives will really be the core of the presentation. And then a line of sight example that Matt is going to be going through to hopefully bring it all together. And then next steps. So as I mentioned in the written staff report, one of the most important pieces of our master plans that set us, at least in my mind, apart from other plans, is the inclusion of a clear line of sight that stretches from the city's comprehensive plan all the way to our annual staff work plans. And this is important to me for at least 2 reasons. First, it ensures that those policies, directives, and goals from the comprehensive plan, which really is the highest element, as you can see, of our planning hierarchy, that those flow down and fuel the master plan, the capital improvement plan, and the annual work plans. So another way to look at this is that this line of sight helps us make sure we are working on the projects and programs that reflect the most important needs of our city and community, which are communicated in the comprehensive plan. And then second, this line of sight approach also helps staff understand how their day-to-day work is helping achieve long-term outcomes. Master plan content. Now, we went over this beginning of this year in February, I believe, with the stormwater surface water section. So a master plan typically includes a system description, basin characterization, problem ID, strategic framework, and then recommended actions. And again, as I said, we covered the first 4 elements of the first 4 elements shown here in the storm and surface water master plan. And today we're really going to be focusing on what's highlighted in red, the strategic framework. And just a heads up going forward, we'll be coming back to you at least one more time, if not twice, and other boards, commissions, and councils with our recommended actions. So this is leading up, a key step to getting to those actions, which I know we all want to get towards. In terms of our strategic framework, there are 6 building blocks: focus areas, purposes, objectives. Again, those are the first 3 we're going to just focus on today, and then we'll be coming back with you again next year for strategies, metrics, and actions. They all build together to create this framework. So for us tonight, like I said, we're going to be on those focus on the first 3. And over the past 2 months, I wanted to let you know that a citywide team from really every department, including great support here from Jen with Parks, has worked closely with Osborne Consulting to develop preliminary information. Now, this information is preliminary because we truly are seeking your input and input from others, and then incorporating those edits as we move along. So again, nothing is baked fully here. This is in process. So the 6 key areas here, and again, these are what I would call the elements of a holistic delivery approach, or really any utility, I'd say. And as you look at these, and as I just read them out, any 1 or 2 may be very high priority for a few years, for a decade, and then maybe just a moderate level. But I think all 6 of these combine to form, like I said, a really solid utility plan. And again, we'll just go over them quickly here. Collaboratively plan for our future needs, protect our natural resources, invest in the employee experience, responsibly manage existing utility assets, transparent community engagement, and fiscal responsibility. What I'd like to do next is run through a series of slides for each focus area, and it's going to have the purpose and then the objectives on the next slide. And I'm just going to remind you of the questions that we have, and please feel free to just stop me and incorporate, let me know your feedback or comments. And we can do this at the end as well too, but this is really gonna set us up as we prioritize going forward with our strategies and our metrics and our actions. So it's really important that we hear from you and everyone else on these higher levels. So as we get into the details, we all know where we're coming from. So again, the open-ended questions I have for you, or specific questions, are: do the focus areas, cover the most important categories? Do the purposes that you're going to see here really make that focus area come alive? Does it make sense to you, what we're trying to get across? And then finally, do these objectives hit the most significant areas of the focus areas? So here's number one, a collaborative plan for future utility needs. And our purpose here is to coordinate across city programs and processes to plan and build city infrastructure in an efficient and safe manner based on expressed community values, best available engineering, and science forecasting. And again, I want to emphasize the collaborative here. That's why we're with you at the Parks Board, so that we're walking hand in hand through this plan, and then as we get into projects with parks and other departments, but not just planning in our own little utility world. And then in terms of objectives for this focus area, a couple key things that we've come up with is budget for life cycle maintenance costs, including staffing needs. So if we're going to build something capital, let's make sure we have the staff to take care of it over time. Coordinate utility planning across all departments. It's kind of the key element of this. Cultivate collaborative relationships with our regulatory community, and then develop a strategic asset management plan to optimize service delivery. Okay, so that was the focus area one, and again, purpose and objectives. And remember, this is still a little high level, but these will then all lead to us coming up with strategies and then actions, working with you and others, but that we can have that clear line of sight. So you can see when we develop a project, and when we come to you with a project, that you're going to know it's like, oh, okay, it comes from this objective. That's why they're doing this. It makes sense. Focus area number two, protect our natural resources. So again, our purpose here, protect and restore the natural environment based on the city's strategic goals, best available science, and express community values. And our high-level objectives here, develop and manage a septic system program to reduce pollution impacts. This one's fairly specific because we do have directive from City Council to be working on this already. Matt will get into this later. This will be our case study of what a full strategic element looks like for a focus area. Protect existing stream and wildlife habitat. Protect our aquifer through responsibly managing our utility assets, and then restore degraded stream and wildlife habitat.
Got a question?
Yes, please.
I was just curious on that, on the previous slide.
Yes, I'll go right back there. Okay.
I'm curious, on septic systems, are we talking about in homes, in residential homes?
Yes. Great question. Sorry about that.
Yeah, and what percentage do you think in the city are septic?
Matt, I believe there's about 300, but Matt Ellis, can you remind me if that is true, if that number is about correct?
Yeah, it's between 300 or 400, 300 to 400 homes.
Okay.
Right, great question. And Matt's going to be, you asked a great question because Matt's going to be coming back to this later on that, using that as the case study. So,
okay, great, thank you.
So thank you for that great question. Focus area 3, so invest in the employee experience. So what we mean here is invest in the city's workforce to drive recruiting and retain skilled and diverse workforce. And some objectives that we're starting with here, invest in staff training beyond basic safety needs and accreditation, utilize asset management principles to forecast future staffing needs, and continue supportive and innovative hybrid work environment. All right, focus area number 4, responsibly manage existing utility assets. This is near and dear to my heart. So sustainably operate and maintain the public storm and sewer infrastructure consistent with our level of service. Some objectives here to give you a flavor where we're headed. Improve response effectiveness under emergency situations to better ensure continuity of operations. And it's great timing for this one, as you may or may not know, we recently hired an emergency manager for the city. So we're looking forward to working with him, Li Shen. Participate in regional efforts, and not just for, just to be part of the big gang, but to optimize the delivery of utility services and leverage regional resources. And then finally, proactively manage existing system performance to maintain expected level of service. So we're going to come back to that level of service, as that is really work to be done, is actually defining those at a more granular level. Transparent community engagement. Again, another one that you often don't see in a master plan, which is focused on mainly capital work, but I think we want to be ahead of the curve in terms of how we are providing utility services. That's why we're here talking to you. But it's not just you; it's the whole community. We want our community to better understand what we do in utilities. So the purpose here: engage with the community to build strong partnerships and develop education outreach opportunities between public, private, and residential entities. And some of the objectives here. Establish, and here we come back to the level of service, which again, it's work in progress. Establish clear and concise customer service levels. And again, what we mean by customer service levels, what matters to our customers, not some fancy performance metric. What we have lots of those, and we need those internally, but these are clear levels that any customer with any background would be able to understand. Collaboratively deliver community education activities across programs and departments. And here again, we're getting back to that collaboration, that if we're going to get out to the community, let's do it together when we can. So parks and public works working together, and maybe other departments as well on education outreach activities. And then improve implementation of city's existing communication framework for utility efforts. So we already have a good communication strategy kit, and I think we in the utilities just need to better implement that with our work. And finally, the last building block for our focus areas here, fiscal responsibility. So develop a fiscal plan to support meeting our defined service levels within an affordable rate structure. A couple objectives here. Budget for full life cycle costs and staffing needs associated with existing and future systems. So there you're seeing a kind of a common thread here, is making sure that we are looking in the long term of what it takes to keep new facilities efficient over time. And then finally, something we do here very well at Issaquah, identify and leverage federal, state, county, and other funding sources so that we can keep our rates affordable. All right, so I'm going to hold off there before Matt goes into a real life example, and just see if there's any comments, questions, concerns about those, again, focus areas, purposes, objectives. I can run back to the slides, or we can go to Matt's and then come back to these later. So, but I'll just take a pause for a second to get the flavor of the room here.
Any comments from anyone?
All right, Matt, why don't we go onto your slide here, and as a precursor, this it's a very busy slide. This is really showing you what it's going to talk to you. Matt's going to talk to you about what we our focus area and objectives. but then we're going to go a little deeper to show you where we're headed to next with all of these, which is then strategies, metrics, and actions. So Matt, take it away, please.
All right. Hi, Matt Ellis, senior engineer. And yeah, as Gary explained, this is a draft sample line of sight for defining a focus area through a defined objective. It shows specific strategies to accomplish that objective. And it shows, in this example, is specifically geared towards proactively managing our private septic systems in the city. And the slide is primarily focusing on the four building blocks, last four building blocks as an example, developing the strategies, metrics, and the action items. So again, this is a draft line of sight, and elements have not been fully vetted. However, we developed this one further than others because we had a commitment to the council, namely to improve our on-site septic system inspection program and evaluate our water quality sampling program within our streams. So this one has been developed a little further than others, but it doesn't mean that they're not all a priority. This is just one that was easier to kind of fill in those last remaining building blocks. So as I go through this busy slide, I'll explain what each category is and then provide examples. And I like to think of this as a tree. We have a very general focus area, then more specific objectives, refined strategies, and still more refined and specific metrics and action items. So for the specific objective on septic, we have three draft strategies. Strategy 1 is to improve private septic system inspection and reporting program. Strategy 2 is to develop a robust water quality sampling plan within all our streams and water bodies. And then strategy 3 is to replace aging existing on-site septic systems with sewer connections in critical areas. So I'll kind of go into that as we go through the metrics and actions. But the metrics and basically the strategy, I like to call the strategies as the what. What are we trying to accomplish? Those three strategies are kind of what we're trying to do to create a proactive septic management program. Then we get to the metrics, which is I like to call the when. When are we going to do it? And it's ways to check in, to keep us on task, and to make sure we are working to accomplish the specific strategy. So metric 1 for strategy 1 is to implement a revised inspection and reporting program by 2025. So our goal is to complete this portion of the work by 2025. Metric 2 is to incorporate our sampling plan into a citywide program by 2025 as well. And then metric 3 is replace all existing septic systems within the shoreline, within shorelines of creeks by 2040. And then we get beyond the metrics and into specific actions. And these are kind of the how, I like to say, and they're the work plans defined within each strategy. They can be capital improvement plans, operating work programs, or educational programs, or a series of different items that work together to achieve a specific strategy. So under strategy 1, our actions are review and revise applicable code relating to septic inspections and develop staff inspection work program. And then under strategy 2, those actions are develop best science approach to evaluating stream samples throughout the city, and develop a program for obtaining stream sampling at strategic locations within the city, as well as developing secondary sampling locations if issues are identified. Then strategy 3, the actions are develop funding strategies to support residents if and when sewer needs to be extended into a neighborhood, and then develop a capital improvement plan for infrastructure needed to extend sewers when the time comes. So again, this is just basically an example of how this can kind of be filled in. And our goal tonight isn't really to kind of go into the weeds here, but this just kind of explains how one would be developed from the start of that tree down to all the branches. Do you have any questions with that?
So I assume, Matt, this just applies to each different type of objective, and that's the scenario that you go through, like for stormwater or whatever, similar process, basically.
That's correct. And as Gary said, there's 6 focus areas, and so each focus area will have a number of objectives, and it varies by that focus area, but it just kind of helps us refine how we're doing our work and making sure we're not just looking at, hey, we've got money, when we have this cool idea, let's build it. Let's really look at what are our priorities and what are we trying to accomplish with the strategic plan.
Ruben, I saw your hand, and actually for everybody else on the board, if you have a question or comment, just in chat, which is the lower right-hand corner, just put in question or comment, and then I'll call upon you. Go ahead, Ruben, because I can't see everybody. Go ahead, Ruben.
Yeah, the question I did have you answered, it was on the funding source for residents who have to make that transition, because it can get pretty costly. So I'm glad to see that's in there, because
Again,
tell somebody you owe us $40,000 to hook up. It's like, what? So
yes, and that's why this is definitely a draft. That's one thing I want to highlight, is that this has not been vetted through the council yet, but as we develop it, that's absolutely a priority, is not just saying, hey, there's an issue and you need to fix it. We're a team together, and we're trying to find ways that we can accomplish this as a city as well in the community.
Yeah, and Ruben, I just would like to add, I really appreciate that question. That's why we actually have that transparent community engagement, because this is where we would have an example of this if we were to move down that path of the metric, number 3, and then develop the funding strategies. We will work hand in hand, with the impacted community. That would be our commitment, is to work and see how we can do this together.
thank you.
All right. Thank you, Matt. Go to last slide here. And where do we go from here? So let me first start by saying that last slide, I really appreciate Matt's careful navigation through that busy slide, because that's really, and I think you mentioned this too, Brad, that's where we're going to be heading with all of the other objectives, right? So probably be about 16 to 20 of those cut sheets that we're going to be coming back to you with, and have a good detailed discussion on the actual actions. But when we come back then, again, you'll see why we have those actions. You'll be able to trace them all the way back up to the focus areas, and then put one and one together, right, and see why we believe that these are important actions. So next steps for us, we're going to incorporate the feedback that we heard tonight, and any more that we hear. We'll also be going to City Council tomorrow night, and Environmental Board and PPC in December. So then we're going to begin the development of those strategies and performance measures and actions for all the objectives, starting in December. In January, we're going to develop the preliminary strategies, measures, and actions, and target a community meeting in early virtual, I'm assuming at this time still, virtually community meeting on everything from the focus areas to the actions. And then we're going to come back to you and all the other boards with that information on February to April timeframe. Going to go back one more time to the community, and then again back to you in the City Council in April to June to wrap this up. So most likely 2 more touches. So again, it's a lot of work to be done, and we're doing it gradually, getting from that higher level to the details. But we figured we'd rather come multiple times so you can see how we're progressing step by step, rather than hitting you at the end with one large presentation. So I'll stop there and just unshare the screen, and if anybody else has any questions or comments.
Anything from the board? Danielle?
curious, I really appreciate the opportunity to hear what you guys are doing and just give input if there are overlaps. I'm curious, like how you would see this affecting the park board or parks, and like where do you see the points that we should be paying attention?
That's a great, thank you. It's a great, and I'll maybe ask Jen to chime in here a little bit. But to date, Jen's voice has come in, really all that you saw on the screen here, right? We had Jen and others from different departments, trying to help us, what should our focus areas be, right? So that we are, showcasing the utility citywide, right? But you're right, where you're really going to see parks come to light is in the strategies and the actions. One that Jeff, myself, Jen, Alan, who's on screen, and then Bob York, our director, have talked about was just how Issaquah Creek and flooding and mobility, trail issues. How can we work better together there? What is the long range impacts looking when we get to flooding? And if we're going to try to solve a flooding problem, how can we do it in unique ways to involve parks, right? In a way that might be beneficial. So I think that's where you're going to really see some ties is in those actions. Jen, anything else you'd like to add to that piece, the collaboration in parks?
Well, I just think it's important to note that, all of our open space actually also plays a role in stormwater management. Even though it's not an active stormwater facility, it really does participate in that, as well as some of our park spaces along the creek, and just ensuring, public safety along with being able to manage the assets with climate change. It's really important because all of our properties are being required to do so many more things these days, whether it's, serve as a stormwater facility, serve as recreational, and just making that sure that we're able to really manage all of our property to the best of its ability to achieve multiple goals.
Yeah, I really appreciate your coming, Gary, and giving us a touch point here. I do agree that there's a lot of connections with parks here. I mean, it's primarily flooding, clean water, habitat issues, saving salmon, all of those are in relationship to parks. And so what you're doing is going to really have a huge impact. So look forward to more.
Thank you. And feel free, Danielle, loved your question too. Just if you have ideas to share that you'd like us to make sure we don't miss as we go to that next step of strategy and actions, please send them, our way through Jen or Jeff or Brad. Because again, we'll have a dialogue. Danielle, we've talked about those actions that I think will resonate with you when we come back next. But if you already know something like, I really want you to incorporate this into your plan or talk about it, let us know now. This is the perfect timing.
Well, I would say, from my perspective, the area that I think is going to need like the most attention, and you all know this, but just from like our active parks that we use is Tibbetts Valley Park. And so as we do a new master plan and kind of anticipate what else is going to go there, could be dramatically different. Like if we put turf in, right? And so that'll be, I think, really important for us to be working like collaboratively on that, so that we're not proposing something that's going to be problematic, and that you all know that Tibbetts is going to be a big priority for us. It's really an underutilized park right now. So like, I would say that's like, to me, that's a pretty big priority.
That's great. That's wonderful feedback. I know Jen and I have talked about that already as well. So that's a little bit on our radar. You're right, but those are the type of examples we'd love to hear more from. So thank you.
Thank you, Gary. You and your team both, and appreciate your coming. We'll see you again.
Thank you very much. Look forward to it.
Thanks, Gary.
So On to our next item, and I think we're going to maybe hear from Brian, maybe even on this one, potentially. But I'll introduce Jeff. This is your topic for scholarship program.
Yes, absolutely. We're going to hear from Brian and Melissa. You don't want to hear from Jeff on this one. I'll tee it up real quick and then hand it off to Brian and Melissa. So one of our goals this year, one of our work plan goals within the recreation group was taking a look at our scholarship program and how we've historically done it, find ways that we could, quite frankly, improve the program, incorporate some improvements to the scholarship program and how accessible those are to the community, especially those in need as we head into 2022. Brian and Melissa will sort of walk you through some of the elements of our historic approach to scholarships, and then really sort of lay out the framework of a new scholarship program that we're putting together. I'll then follow up and talk real quickly when they're done about next steps, and really just inviting your input, comments, any advice you have as we proceed into this new endeavor. So Brian, Melissa, take it away.
Yeah, I'm happy to start out there. Melissa, you can fill in any gaps that I might miss there. Thank you, Jeff. Brian Burnson, Recreation Services Manager. We've had we created a scholarship resolution like 2014. Since then we've realized that it's become a little limited over time. I think there's a lot more we can do, and wanted to just sort of share with you all where we've been, and then get some input of what you think would be important moving forward. The previous scholarship sort of had a limited funding source, so it was a little bit more of a first come, first serve sort of basis, and that's one of the biggest things we're going to be looking to get rid of. Whereas if you qualify in the future, what we're looking to do is if you qualify, you qualify. Our goal is to sort of align ourselves with some of what the other cities around us have been doing. It also, it reduces some of those barriers that, if you don't get in quick enough, and sometimes folks that are a little bit more technologically savvy or whatnot get in quicker. We want to be able to provide that opportunity for everybody in that moving forward. Currently, it's been primarily more of a youth program. It's been really dialed in towards youth. And I think moving forward, we would like to have a program that serves both youth and adults. Youth is always going to be one of our primary focuses. But moving forward, we want to have something that's a little bit more comprehensive is what we've been thinking. Like I said, the program we had worked for a long time. It's just we've grown. The city's we're getting bigger, right? So it's time to look at our scholarship program and how we can broaden it just so that it does meet the needs and reduces some barriers to some of the financial barriers that we have within our community, so we can be a little bit more equitable with our programming moving forward. Melissa, do you want to add anything to that?
Sure thing. Thank you. No, Brian covered that really well. Historically, the program has been limiting. That's kind of the key word, right? So we have a fixed fund that we would start with at the beginning of every year. Typically, new applications would come in starting in December, and usually by the end of January, from all the applications we would get, all of the funds would be allocated out for the year. And so early in the program, what would happen is we would award those funds to the max that we were allowed that year to families to use. And oftentimes families either weren't using the funds and holding them up from other people being able to use them, or needed more, and we didn't have the ability to provide more for them. So over the years, we revised how we allocated the funds on a quarterly basis, and that helped a bit, but we were still running into that issue where as we got toward the end of the year, and usually after summer camp was concluded, we would be out of funds for the scholarship program. And so what we're hoping to do with this amended program is to award scholarships on a percentage base, and that's based on the King County adjusted median income amounts, right? And so those are reviewed each year and adjusted accordingly, depending on what King County sets as those baselines. And then depending on where they fall for their family size and their adjusted median income, they will qualify for a certain percentage discount for the programs for the course of the year. One of the outstanding items we have is, what type of threshold or cap will we want to put on an individual or a family? Our neighboring cities around us vary, right? Anywhere from, a few $100s to several $100s. So that's one thing that we would need to take into consideration. And then the other consideration we'll have is working with our partner services. When we have third-party providers coming in and teaching a class or offering a program that, we're paying them effectively a percentage of the totals that are coming in. So, I think the biggest thing for us with this is overcoming this limited fund issue that we have so that we can better serve the community. Presently, we serve youth that are 18 and under, not only within city limits, but also within Issaquah School District. So that might be something else we want to talk about as well. But the fundamental change is just that we would be allowing a percentage discount across the board and removing that limitation for participation in the program throughout the year. So Jeff, I'll pass it off to you, and you can go ahead and fill in what our asks is of the board.
No, that's a great overview. And if I could paraphrase what Brian and Melissa said so well. So historically, we have managed a scholarship program that requires scholarship dollars, revenues, and expenditures. And that has become extremely limiting. So we can only give as many scholarships as we have revenue for. What we're proposing, and which mirrors a lot of other both nonprofit, private, and other city businesses around us, is transition to a fee reduction model. And that's if you qualify, if you have financial need, we are going to set tiers and you will qualify for X amount of a fee reduction, so that we're not having to become limited by the revenue side of the ledger. And again, this mirrors a lot of other agencies and scholarship sort of fee discount programs around us. Why this is an important step and sort of what comes next for us is we will need to go to City Council beginning of next year and request that ability for us to reduce fees. So we want to set up this scholarship program, define financial need, define what that application process is, and if a resident qualifies, we would need to get council's authorization to allow us to discount fees for those qualifying families. So we just thought this would be a great time to sort of give you an update on some of the inner workings of what's going on in recreation. The recreation team, and really the scholarship would be for any and all of our community center programs, our athletic programs, our summer day camps, swimming pool programs. This is a program that could easily be implemented at the senior center as well. So it really becomes universal across all of our recreation lines.
And to clarify, there's a timing of it where that program shuts down, or is that open throughout the year? I didn't catch that part.
We strive for it to be open throughout the year, but currently it shuts down if there's not revenue sitting there to fill scholarships. Whereas if a model we would like to shift would become much more available the whole year round. So Danielle has a question.
Have you, like, what kind of application process are you thinking about doing? Is it going to be, like matching up with like for families who qualify for free or reduced lunches? Like, is it going to be, I guess my suggestion would be to have it be as simple as possible. And
Absolutely.
and
Yep.
hopefully if they are able to do that, then they don't have to fill out another application for like the next session that they want to to do in a couple months.
Yep, absolutely, Danielle. It's well said. Yeah, we would want it to be simple and be able to mirror some of the other qualifying metrics that already exist.
And then my other question is, I know on another board on which I serve, where they have scholarships, for fees. They actually will hold, like, when it's like a super popular, like, time, when, like, for a camp registration, when, like, if you're not on your computer at whatever time that is, or, in line, then you will not get, the camp will fill up. And what they do is we'll hold some of those spots, for families that they know are going to need financial assistance, because it's not everybody's on the same playing field with being able to be either, like, in line at a certain time on a certain day or on a computer. So it's just something else to think about, maybe.
Yeah. But the nice thing about our new software that we have, Danielle, in managing scholarships is we're able to get them approved ahead of time. And so even in the current model, they're allowed to register with that amount that they are given now in the current program. And then moving forward, they would be able to register at the same time with, the same abilities as others with the reduced model as well. So it removes that barrier entirely from, prior to that, we used to have issues, but now our new software program definitely, cleans the slate and makes it a lot easier for everybody to have the same access.
Trying to level that. If I could just add one thing, Danielle, I think that another element to your question and comments, a really good one, and that's just one of equity, right? Yeah. Of not necessarily whether it's financial need or not, but just understanding some of that equity lens and how are we understanding maybe not everyone has the same access to a computer, et cetera. So at the same time we're doing this, we are sort of starting to take some of those equity looks at a number of our programs and popular facilities.
And that's really where where my question was aimed. So, like, not everybody, I mean, I don't know how the registration for day camps work now, but when my kids were little, it's like you went in person at a certain, time and place, right? And, not everybody can do that, right?
Super fast. It's online, but it's super fast. You're right. Yeah.
So, so the point being is that just knowing that equity is a barrier, that there are barriers in enrolling, promptly at that certain time, that perhaps for those programs that are super popular, you hold back, a certain number of spots, to fill with people who are qualified for financial assistance. Just something to think about.
And is there any proof that's required in terms of financial need in this application process, or is it an honor system?
Yeah, Brian, I can answer that. So we have a variety of ways that they can have qualifications for the program, ranging anywhere from DSHS approval letters as a foster child or guardian, W-2 information, a variety of different Head Start program verification. So there's a lot of different options that they can provide to us, whereas if they don't have one, they could certainly provide another for us.
And like you mentioned, Danielle, participation in the meals program would be one as well. And we do check once a year. We don't, once you do it, it's good for a year. And then we do check every year because situations can change year to year. But so we try to not make it an inconvenience, but yet there's an accountability piece we want to hold as well.
We also have a piece built in for hardships. So if somebody were to apply and get approved for a certain dollar amount, but then experience a further hardship throughout the year, we can go in and reevaluate and increase that amount if need be, temporarily while we're in a further hardship. Or alternatively, if it's someone who doesn't have a hardship prior to this, but experiences one that puts them into one of the categories, we can assess that and accommodate their needs as well in a limited duration.
I like it. It's more flexible. It's not so restrictive. It creates more of a broader opportunity for people. I mean, I think it's a great concept. Do you need anything from us as a board?
Just, I think this feedback is really helpful. If you all feel the same way and want to give a thumbs up or even just sort of give an advisory vote, one of those things, that'd be really helpful as we because we plan on taking this to council in January, so we can really hit the ground running with 2022. Seeing thumbs up from everybody.
Thumbs up, everybody, if you approve. I see everybody, so.
Super helpful. No, thank you. Thank you. And again, Brian, Melissa, the whole recreation team, appreciate their work and really, again, just making improvements to an already successful scholarship program.
Thank you, Brian.
That's
Thank
it.
you, Melissa. Good work. So we're down to our last item, which is Anchor Park information from Jennifer. And we thought this might happen, Jen. We're kind of a little short on time, so you might shorten it up for how's 7 minutes sound?
I can do it in 5 or less.
Name that tune, man.
Name
That's
that tune. Okay. Hi, everyone. Nice to see you this evening. Here to give you a quick update on where we've been with Anchor Parks. As you may recall, last month I gave you a brief overview of kind of the Anchor Parks, where we were pre-pandemic and where we thought we were going to go. And so for our meeting tonight, I just want to share with you, we have started having some of our, again, from October, we talked about, the Anchor Parks included both Veterans Memorial Field, Tibbetts Valley Park, and the Creek Corridor. And during that time, we had collective outreach, but we are going to be separating those projects out individually. And as we start kind of figuring out how we're going to relaunch all of these programs, projects, we've been working with some focus groups and having some real open and high-level conversation with them to get their perspective on how their thoughts on the parks and also how the pandemic may have changed kind of where we were going. So what I'm showing you are just some really high-level graphics that were shared with each of the 6 focus groups that we've met with. We've met with around 35 community members so far. And this is really just to kind of show Issaquah, where the parks are, the relationship to each other, also to our natural open spaces, the trails, Rainier Trail, the Creek Corridor, Tibbetts Valley Park, Veterans Memorial, Confluence Park is up in there too, and kind of where the old town is. So everyone can kind of get a spatial feel of that relationship. And then as we focus in a little bit more, here's Tibbetts Valley Park, its relationship to Newport Way, but also how close it is to the Creek Corridor, Confluence Park, as well as the Rainier Trail and Veterans Memorial. And then just a little bit more of a close-up as far as what's happening around Tibbetts Valley Park. To the north of Tibbetts Valley Park, north of Newport Way, is Central Issaquah neighborhood. And there's going to be roughly up to 700 new units just on the other side of Newport Way, probably within the next 5 to 7 years. So how this park can serve not only the future Central Issaquah neighborhood, but kind of the Newport neighborhood, as well as Tallis neighborhood, as well as Squaw Mountain neighborhood, is going to be really, really important as we move forward. And then as we look at Veterans Memorial Park, its relationship to the Rainier Trail, Pedestrian Park, Depot Park, the Senior Center, Alder Street, which is also Festival Street, which is undergoing some upgrades this year and into next year, and its relationship to, the Rainier Trail, but also the Lake Sammamish Trail and Issaquah Creek, and really how this really is an anchor for the downtown area. So as I've mentioned, we've had 6 focus group meetings so far, and we've just had really high-level conversation and these are the prompt questions we've been asking is what roles do these parks and trails play for Issaquah currently? How are these parks underperforming, not only for your personal interests, but for the greater community interests? How do you use these parks? How can the parks better serve you? What do these parks mean for Issaquah's future, and how should we reinvest or reposition them? And as we revive these planning efforts, which project do you think we should focus on and tackle first? And so last week was the last of our meetings. So I'm in process right now of putting together all of that information, compiling it, and we'll reconvene with our consultant team. And then it's going to be our goal to really identify which of the anchor parks is the first we're going to start reviving and focusing on as we're separating these projects out from one another. And then we're going to reformulate our public engagement plan and probably develop our forecasted schedule. So with that, I will take any questions. How'd I do on time, Brad?
Did outstanding. Well, you even got 2 minutes to share here, okay, for questions. I guess my only question would be timing. When do you think that this will roll out to the community for the next step?
Honestly, it's probably with this needing to get with a consultant team, gather all the information. We're kind of in the midst of holidays, likely after the new year, just with timing and vacations and people's availability and the public's availability. So likely the consultant team and I will be getting together, start formulating kind of our plan of attack. And I would assume in January, I'd be able to come forward and likely public engagement, being able to get materials together. It may be February, but definitely Q1 we'll get the first one out of the gate and rolling. And we'll definitely keep you posted month to month.
Still going to be able to move forward even if we need to do it virtually?
Yes, I think we can. I think there's been so much engagement has been very good virtually. And I think we also have other methods that we can, and surveys and things if we need to. I think we found that out with a wayfinding survey, that there's unique ways we can reach the community and still get their input.
Good. Danielle?
Just, I'm curious if what the status is of the kind of field survey or audit, kind of where that work is.
Yeah, great. Thank you for asking. We're right now waiting for a revised scope of work from the consultant. So once we get that back, we'll get that under contract and likely be starting in the new year. So they have not yet started work, but we're getting it underway.
So that's something the consultant's doing, not the city?
Correct. Well, we're guiding it, but we're working with a consultant team to help us on that, do an independent study.
Okay.
It's the study to establish our athletic field needs, right?
Correct.
Yeah, it's a broader citywide look at sports field assessment needs. Honestly, taking a look at our park strategic plan and some of the recommendations we have for athletic fields, and how are we sort of keeping that big picture sense of how we're going to be addressing athletic fields as we're looking at these park planning efforts. And so, Danny, if I could just add to what Jen said, yeah, this is very much going to be a big staff lift, but I think as other cities are an example, and some other cities I've worked in, having some consultant assistance as well is really, really important given just what else is on the plate.
Will they be taking a look at schools as an option of availability as
Yeah,
well?
so scope of work, and again, this is this was spelled out in our park strategic plan. So talk about line of sight. I love Gary's sense of line of sight. It's like, hey, park board knows line of sight because the park strategic plan is really tying to everything, right? Our park CIP is tied to it, our capital projects, etc. So the park strategic plan would tell us this sports field assessment is going to look at city land, school district land, and state park. And how do we make sure all of those public land managers and those public lands, we're sort of thinking through from a field assessment, field needs standpoint.
And
That's
is
great.
part of this, I mean, my understanding when we kind of tabled this all, like, I think 2 years ago, I mean, it's been a while, was that that survey was also going to look specifically at, or it would shed some light as to like what the current fields are that Tibbetts and Veterans Memorial are using, and whether those can be, like if we were to shift those uses somewhere else, like where would they go, right? So we're not just losing fields.
Precisely, exactly. So that, yeah, this assessment helps inform, okay, programmatically, if something shifts at Tibbetts, how in that shift are we still addressing and accommodating sports field needs elsewhere? Or quite frankly, the assessment will help, I think, affirm what sports field programs are still needed in some of our own city parks. So yeah, it's really trying to keep that big picture as we may be making site-specific recommendations here in the coming year. As we're making those, we keep the big picture in mind.
Yeah, okay, thanks.
Any other questions or comments from the board on this one? Seeing nothing, it's time to move on to reports. I guess that's me first. And I got a few things, so I'll try and rapid fire through this here. First thing, thanks everyone for such a good year here of so many different topics. We've been really throwing a lot at you here in the agendas, especially for the last several months. So in honor of that, we decided I think it's time for a little break. So we're going to take a break during the holidays and not have our meeting on December 27th, which is scheduled, which is the Monday right after the Christmas holiday. So you get even a further break there. Although there are a lot of things going on, as you well know, and so Jeff and I will talk further as to whether or not we need to change our meeting date in January or even add potentially a special meeting in January. So we'll get back to you on that, but nothing happening in December. And the only thing that would probably change it is if we have some things possibly that might crop up in the task force for some timing elements in January that might change our timing of our next board meeting, or maybe a need for a special meeting, but happy holidays for December. I attended a Kokanee work group meeting on October 27th, and the real highlights of there is a lot of design work going on with Laughing Jacobs Creek, Tibbetts Creek, and Issaquah Creek. Those are the three main ones, tributaries that running through Issaquah. Issaquah Creek actually is a big design going on through Mountain Sound Greenway that they're kind of sizing up and should have some construction actually started next year on Issaquah Creek for a number of restoration efforts. There's a weed control project going on at Lake Sammamish. It's been going on for some time now, managed by Trout Unlimited. Got some funding to do that. I don't want to share anything specific now. I can later. Spawning Grounds documentary film is actually now being updated. It's actually done its full loop throughout the country with a variety of film projects. I shouldn't say projects, film festivals, I guess would be the best thing. It's a number of them throughout the country, but now it's actually going to be updated with some new material and re-released here in the next couple months. And with the intention of shortening it up and bringing it available to public television. And also a potential release to the community more openly and for free, which is something I've been advocating for some time. So stay tuned on that. Some really good news in terms of some kokanee returns. This year is looking optimistic and don't have any numbers yet, but we're just now getting into kokanee review now, so should actually have some numbers probably first quarter next year. Probably the most interesting thing is Zacchaeus Creek, which actually had a pretty substantial restoration project done to it in the last year or two. A bunch of culvert work done by City of Sammamish and a number of restoration projects between Sammamish, the Kokanee work group through King County and the Snoqualmie tribe. And so for the first time in decades, actually, there's now a kokanee going into Zacchaeus Creek. So that's a really good sign. You'll see more of that on the film. I attended the FLIS annual meeting, which was November 4th. And Nikki Fields, who is the state park planner, was there and gave a nice presentation. Primarily, they're still working on updating the master plan for the Lake Sammamish State Park and still undergoing an environmental impact statement review. But primarily, she was able to give us an update on a number of capital projects. Most importantly, the dock at Sunset Beach and Sunset Beach upgrades, and the trails plan, which is something that was introduced by Bill Way and a number of people from FLIS that was introduced to the park board this past year. That's now been and is in the process of being adopted into the master plan. And so there's funding available for a lot of these things, both for trails, dock, sunset upgrades. So a lot of good things on the horizon for Lake Sammamish State Park. And the last thing is just give you a brief update on task force. I attended a meeting on November 2nd and also another one on November 16th. Primarily now we've refined the top three priorities, which are transportation, parks, and facilities. Transportation is at the top. Parks and facilities is kind of a toss-up in terms of which one of those is more of a priority. I've been advocating for parks. And we also have now refined the top 5 refined criteria that we're looking at to apply to these priorities. And they are pain points, return on investment, establishing least satisfying and most important, life and safety, and visionary and ambitious. So I could get into a lot more detail, but I won't. But those are kind of the criteria that we're going to apply to the priorities. Jeff had a good opportunity to provide some more detail about the Metropolitan Park District. We'll talk further into next year about that. But that looks to be a promising funding opportunity that the city has not explored until now. That we'll see how that plays out, but that might have a good opportunity for future funding for capital improvement projects with the park system. And we actually also did a kind of an overview of all of the funding opportunities that apply to various departments. And again, I won't go into the details in that either, but I think the intention at this point, we have a couple more meetings in December and several in January, with the intention by the end of January to come up with some proposals to the mayor and city council about priorities and how to go about funding them as it relates to the 6-year CIP. So that's it for me. And now we have, I always appreciate how patient Ryan is at waiting for his opportunity here, but it's your turn, Ryan, to shine. So what do you have for us?
Thank you, Brad. I don't have too much to share. We've had 2 youth advisory board meetings since the last Parks Board meeting. The main thing we've done is breaking up into 6 different project groups. So we have a group working on a movie night that's going to happen in February, a group putting together a Harry Potter night for January. And then there's a group of several people that sort of fall under our advocacy committee, and they're working on a variety of projects within LGBTQ advocacy, environmental advocacy, putting on the annual mental health conference that we've been hosting called State of Mind, and then another group focusing on supporting children in need. And so really we've just been digging deep into planning for all those things, getting ready to promote them all as we head into the new year and really hit the ground running now that we are meeting back in person again. And before I hand it off to Jeff, you may notice that there is a new face here tonight. Sean Fan is a member of the Youth Advisory Board, and he's joining me as a youth representative. So Sean, if you want to introduce yourself real quick, that would be great.
Glad I got to sit in with all these amazing conversations and the stuff that's happening in the parks and the I just want to do a quick introduction. I'm Sean. I currently attend Skyline High School. I'm a part of the Issaquah Youth Advisory Board. I am in the same grade as Ryan. I'm a senior, and I'm really excited to be joining you guys this year for a future meeting. So, yeah.
Thank you, Sean. Welcome. And thank you, Ryan. Are you done with that? Thanks for all that information. So, Jeff, you get to do the wrap up.
Let's wrap this up. Yeah, Ryan, thank you. Sean, so glad you're here as well. Thank you, everyone. So real quick director's report. Last Monday night, City Council adopted the 2022 budget, the operating budget and the capital budget. So off we go into putting together our work plan as a department. Lots of good support from council, some additional resources coming our way for park operations needs. We have some additional resources coming on board within our recreation team for additional staff. Given some of the significant impacts we had during the pandemic within our recreation facilities, those 4 positions will be really key as we move forward with our new recreation model. So with that adopted budget, as I've done in prior years, come January at our next park board meeting, I'd like to bring sort of our abbreviated, not every single item, but abbreviated 2022 work plan. So you all have a chance to see that. At that same meeting, I'd like to bring the 2021 work plan and sort of have a quick review of that. It's healthy for us as a department, and I hope hopefully healthy for you as a park board to look back at 21 and see the check boxes we have. It's been a crazy year, and I think for all of us these last 2 years, but this department's certainly accomplished a lot in that. So we'll have some time in January to sort of look at work plan, and then as we've done in prior years, really then take a look and say, what does this mean for park board work plan in terms of what are those significant projects that'll be sort of on park board agendas through 2022. So again, always look forward to that discussion. Yeah, appreciated the chance to share with the Capital Task Force the funding tool of a park district. I'll certainly continue to work with Brad and with staff and with the rest of the task force members to see how and where that might fit in. Some really important work being done by that task force and really trying to understand the capital funding needs really for all the public infrastructure that this city has. So whether transportation's first or parks and trails are second or facilities are third or whatever, it's really that's really important infrastructure, all of that for livability and quality of life. And so it'll be really important work to see how as residents you all want to invest in your public infrastructure moving forward. So have a great Thanksgiving. Have a great holiday. Even though we're not meeting in December, still would be great if any of you individually want to touch base and just sort of talk through the year or goals you have for next year. I'm certainly always available for that. So that's it. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Jeff. Appreciate it. And any other new business or announcements or comments? So I'll, got something, Danielle?
Yeah, just real quick. I don't know if the rest of you guys did the survey that came out in the city this last week that kind of was about what businesses people want to see kind of be attracted. It struck me as odd. One of the categories, there was like a retail category and a restaurant category and a arts, culture, entertainment category and an outdoor recreation category. And it struck me as odd that there wasn't anything similar for indoor or like indoor recreation if there was outdoor recreation. And so I provided my feedback to the person who's doing who did that survey. I was kind of disappointed because I think that from our perspective, it's really important for us to know what recreational kind of opportunities people are looking for other than parks and recreation, other than like fields and the recreational opportunities that the park department provides. Like, for example, what I'm thinking of is like, are the family friendly opportunity, like businesses that we don't have in Issaquah that we have to go elsewhere for, like bowling, like, like Top Golf just is going into Redmond or Renton, laser tag, that, those types of activities. So anyway, I encourage you to do the survey and give your feedback as well. And I'm hoping that in the future that department will be thinking about those types of things, because those are the places where we have opportunities in the future for maybe public-private partnerships or whatnot. So anyway, just wanted to bring that up.
Good point, Daniel.
And Danielle, if I could give a shout out and a kudos to you, thanks for bringing that up. And Jen Davis Hayes and the economic development team put that survey together, and I know she'll take that feedback to heart. That's really good feedback.
I think it was just a miss, but it shows us why it's so important to have these other groups come and talk to us so that we can give our feedback as well. Because it's in my mind, it's a huge miss, because it would have been so informative and such good information for us. We struggled with that indoor tennis facility, public-private partnership issue, a number of years back. And, so anyway, give your feedback on the survey.
Good. Anything else from anybody? If not, have a great holiday, everybody, and we'll see you in January. And Jeff, I'll see you sooner. Maybe actually, you and Zach and I should maybe still meet in December if possible. I'll leave that up to you.
Absolutely. Yeah, let's meet.
Okay, good. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great night.
Have a good evening.